Permit me to begin on this premise. The late Dr. Chuba Okadibo once postulated that if you are emotionally attached to your tribe, religion, or political leaning to the point that truth and justice become secondary considerations, your education is useless. Your exposure becomes useless. If you cannot reason beyond petty sentiments, you are a liability to mankind. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is Star News TV, Biafra 1. Today, we shall be talking on the reason why Igbos and most Biafrans stood against Peter Gregory Obi and the economic situation of Africa and Nigeria in particular. Today, I shall give you 4 reasons why I personally stood against Peter Gregory Obi, and I believe my position is in sync with so many Biafrans, and that is why they stood against Peter Obi. Now, the first reason is financial strength. Financial strength. The second reason is political inclination. Political inclination. The political party he aligned with. Third is the world power. The West, America, Europe, and all of that. The world power. What is their interest? Then the last and the most important is the hatred for the Igbo race. The hatred for the Igbo people. Why did I talk about financial strength? Financial strength in the sense that we all know how corrupt Nigeria is. And whoever wants to assume position or assume any political office in Nigeria must take it by force. This is not a make-up statement or whatever. If you listen carefully to the past, just the immediate past governor of Rivers State, Nyesom Wike, he made this statement during the primaries election for People's Democratic Party, PDP. He said it categorically clear that power is taken and not given. And so in Nigeria, you do not go to take power. You do not wait to be given power. You force yourself and take that power by force. Now, this is wrong. This is not democracy. This is not the right way to do things. But this is the Nigerian reality. And P2B does not have such structure. He does not have such financial strength to muzzle himself in. He does not have the financial strength to, he does not have that power to change the polity of Nigeria to his own favor, which is one of the defining, features that was used against him. Now, secondly, political party inclination. If you are in Nigeria, you know that the 2 strongest political parties are the People's Democratic Party, PDP, and the APC. If you do not belong in any of these 2 parties, know that you cannot win an election. Now, by winning an election does not mean that people will not vote for you. Winning an election means that you do not have that position, that influence, that power to change whatever it is that would appear as the result of the elections. Because over time we have seen that there has not there has not been anything like election in Nigeria. What you have is selection and a case of the highest bidder. So this is what you have in Nigeria, a case of the highest bidder. And as such, these two political parties have that strength, that muscle, and that structure. They have people in power that can effect this desired change. So what are we saying? That if P2B did not come out on the platform of People's Democratic Party or APC, he does not have that chance to win, because he does not have the control of the people who are in charge of the elections. Third is the world power and the West. This will bring me to my second topic about discussion about the deliberate financial strangulation of Africa and Nigeria in particular. The deliberate strangulation, financial strangulation, where you hear about what is it called, Naira devaluation, where you hear about borrowing and all of that, how to repay borrowed funds, how to repay debt. And we will come into that. But now this is another problem. The West have their interest. They have their interest in Nigeria, and they would want someone who will protect their interest. Now, what is the interest of the West? The interest of the West is to ensure that Africa continues to borrow, that Africa remains indebted. Now, so many persons will argue that why would you say that US borrows, every other country borrows? The difference will be explained in a video that I will play later. You would listen to the video and you would gain the difference between these two type of borrowing, or these two debtors. They are a whole different thing altogether. And so when America is borrowing, you do not expect America to pay back. It is just like America is borrowing their own money. And as such, you can't place any financial burden on America because they borrowed. But in Nigeria, that financial burden remains on you, and it begins to depreciate your economy. And this is why the world power would not want you to produce anything, to become a producing nation. They wouldn't want you to become a producing nation because they want you to be dependent on them. Now, why is this a barrier to P2B? P2B came in with the mandate of he wants to change Nigeria to a production country and not a consuming country. Now, those people who control Nigeria are against it, because they want you to be a consuming nation, such that you have the raw materials, you have the raw resources, you send it over to them, they refine it and push it back to you as refined goods and consumable goods, and you buy from them. So indirectly, you depend on them for food, you depend on them for growth, you depend on them for wealth, you depend on them for everything. So they want to keep you at that level, such that you are not a productive nation. You become a consuming nation, such that you will always remain indebted to them, you will always go to buy from them, and you will always remain under their guide. The fourth, but not the least, which is the most important, is the hatred for the Igbo nation, the hatred for the Igbo race. Now, no matter where you are, no matter who you are, as long as you are an Igbo man, forget it. Forget it. You can never smell the seat of power in Nigeria. if P2B was to be a Fulani man or a Yoruba Muslim, or he will win that position hands down, and nobody will contest it with him.
Nigeria, aya marigo ndiwe Nigeria, Hausa na Yoruba ndiwe Nigeria, Oyibo na ro president na lo, Oyibo na la salot na lo, se na Hausa mari pa ne me o, se ni Yoruba mari pa ne me, ane ma yegu ne titi o, Hausa pastor Yoruba pastor Hausa.
Now, so many Biafrans have read all these things and seen the future. And that is why we were against P2B. Relax and fight for your freedom. Do not drag the Biafrans into this election, because our freedom was near. It was another avenue to show to the world that we are not wanted in this nation. It was supposed to be a very clear message to everyone. But P2B, in his stupidity, came through another little party that could not afford any financial strength, political inclination, that power, that political will, and it does not even align with what the West is looking for. So you see all the reasons we have seen, and over ages it remains the same. We keep telling these people that you cannot change this thing. You need your own nation. You need your own nation. When Asari Dokubo was with his right senses, he will always say, your saving grace is Biafra.
The only thing that can guarantee our freedom is the independence of Biafra. There's no two ways about it.
This has always been his words. Now, I was talking about the influence of the world power against Africa and Nigeria in particular. Now, I have made so many assertions in respect to that. This is because the West wants to keep you impoverished. The West wants to keep you indebted to them, and that is why you cannot progress if you do not think beyond your nose. You see, your worst enemy is the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. Now, Nigeria has to pay back all those debts, but America may not really have to pay back anything. The UK may not really have to pay back anything. The West, the world powers, may not really have to pay anything. Listen to this video and you would understand better.
Thank you. I have a question. What's the difference between the U.S. debt and the debt that African nations own? Because the U.S. debt doesn't keep the U.S. from being one of the leading powers of the world, but then African nations can't make it because of that debt that is strangling them.
Shall I talk? Okay. The first question is a very important question. What makes African and third world debt different from the American debt? Number one, America is never going to pay its debts. It doesn't have to. Its debts are in its own currency. We can simply print it. The African debt is not in its currency. The African debt is in US dollars. Africa has to earn the US dollars, and the only way it can earn the US dollars is not to be assassinated for growing its own food and becoming independent and doing something that the United States does not like. The principle underlying the foundation of the World Bank, the International Bank for IBRD, research, the World Bank, is that no country should grow its own food. Africa and the third world should only grow export crops. To export, in order to have an oversupply of cocoa and other tropical raw materials, to keep down the price, they must buy their grain from the United States or Europe, so that if they do something that we don't like, we can do what America tried to do to China in the 60s. We can sanction them. We can say, we're going to starve you. We're going to not export any grain to you. So owing their foreign debt in dollars means that they have to somehow sell something that the United States wants, not what they want. I think the most evil organizations in the world today are the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. And my book, Super Imperialism, that I wrote in 1972, is all about that. The largest purchasers of the book were the Defense Department and the CIA. I was immediately, the organization I worked for was given a $75,000, $85,000 Defense Department contract for me to come to explain to them how American imperialism worked, and they used it as a how to do it book. They thought it was just spontaneous, and I had written the book thinking that socialists in third world countries would do something about it, and indeed it was translated into Spanish and other languages, but it was really the Defense Department that applied most of this, and I was amazed when I was invited to the White House to explain how imperialism worked. And my boss said, we've run rings around the British imperialists. This is how to do it. You make them owe the debts in your currency, not their own. You control their central bank and make them financially dependent on you, and then you've got a stranglehold for them. So certainly the third world countries should cancel the debts under the odious debt principle. I haven't been able to convince any of them to do it because they said if we do that, the CIA will kill us. So how do you break that cycle? That's a problem I've not been able to solve.
The other thing, when you were responding to the first question, there's also something we're suffering from in Africa. The devaluation of currency as another way of
Devaluation of
the currency.
oh, currency. Yes.
As a way of keeping us dependent continuously.
That's a good point. When a country devalues a currency, what are they devaluing? Well, you know, there's a world price for grain, a world price for aluminum, a world price for raw materials. The only thing that they can really devalue is the price of their labor. So when Africa or Latin America or Greece is told to, or America is told to devalue the currency, what that means is pay labor less. You have to squeeze out more to pay the top of the economic pyramid, to suck it all up to the top 10% or 1% or 0.1%. So devaluation is basically an anti-labor policy to prevent a domestic market and prosperity from developing. That is why China and Russia are saying, we don't want to be part of the dollar area. We want our own currency, and we'll only borrow in our own debt. Last time I went to China, it was a little annoying because they insisted in paying me in yuan, which all these little red bills that you have to go to a bank to turn in, and yet they said, well, we're following your advice. What do you complain about? So what could I do? It's a good idea, but at least they don't want any part of American